You can't be stuck if you're in motion. And so we've spent a lot of time in this conversation talking about who you're listening to. That's only of so much value unless you are in motion. So, okay, I'm dreaming of this. I'm planning it. I'm thinking about it. This might be possible. Well, are you executing? Are you in motion? Are you doing things that are moving you forward? And so many people in my experience get paralyzed because they have a mindset that's macro. In other words, okay, I want to do this, or I want to be that, or I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to be fit, or I want to whatever. And so I'm thinking about all the things that I have to do and what it would take to get from here to there. And that becomes intimidating and causes me to therefore be paralyzed.
Welcome back to another episode of the What's Next podcast. And in today's episode, I have a very, very special guest. And I'll explain shortly why it's so special to me. But Russ, thanks for hopping on, man.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Of course, of course, of course. I mean, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, I mean, my background there's lots of things I could say and and bore you and your audience with. I guess the short version is I make my living. I like to say that, I make my living working with senior executive teams of some of the world's biggest companies. And that's been an amazing journey. And we might get into that at some point, I'm sure. And so I'm one of the founders and owners of a consulting firm that coaches and consults senior executive teams of
hmm
companies across a bunch of different industries. And then we have another part of our business that is a leadership development training company that
Part of the
creates.
same company?
What's that?
Is that part of the same company?
Yeah, there are two different divisions. One is consulting and one is training. So one is,
Okay.
we'll have senior executives that will say, "Hey, come work with us," and we sign up for a retainer for a year, and we're on site with them every quarter. We're talking to, our client, the executive, once a month in a call, actually kind of like this, where we're coaching them and we're asking questions, and we work as teams. And so a team from our firm would be assigned to that company or to that executive team. And so that's one part of our company. The other part is leadership development, leadership training, which is, we call it Lead in 30. So it's a 30-day cohort experience, 4 weeks, 2 hours a week, that companies typically will put their leaders or managers through, and and we upgrade their ability to lead other people in 30 days. So yeah, that's that. Beyond that, I'm active. I'm a believer, and that's part of how we got connected is through fitness and being active. And because I think growth is, people who are addicted to growth, it's tied to their career, it's tied to their desire to get smarter, wiser, it's tied to their desire to be healthy emotionally, physically, all those ways, right? So those are just a few things about me.
Great, 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 great. So much to unpack here. So much to unpack. And I'm sure the audience is very, very curious on how did we meet? How did you this dude with the company and everything
Right,
speak to Dominic, right? Because
right.
essentially in comparison to you, I'm really a nobody right now, right? Which is fine, right? We all start somewhere. Having said that, I wanna know from your perspective, Russ, how did we meet? Because I wanna tell the story from my perspective, but it'd be really, really interesting to hear from your perspective, and I think for the audience too.
You know what? I mean, to be honest, I can't remember the specific way that I came across you. It probably was in content that you were creating, and noise that you
hmm
were making. Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you remember what resonated with me particularly that made you want to follow me on Instagram, for example?
You know what, I mean, I don't remember, Dominic, if it's something that if it was just like literally like a suggested post or if it was you commenting us. I can't honestly remember because it was several years ago. And, um, and so it's actually one of the principles I believe in is that, what you consume affects what you create is
Hmm.
a core principle of mine. And when I say consume, a lot of people think, "Oh, what you mean what I eat?" Well, that's true, but not really what I mean. What I'm talking about is what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're viewing. And so, in my effort to be healthy physically, I'm constantly just, scrolling through different stuff, looking at things and going, oh, that's interesting. I ought to try that. I ought to try that. Add that to my routine. I ought to
Hmm.
do that. And so my memory, it might be incorrect, is that I came across some piece of content. I thought, oh, dude, like, that's interesting. I ought to try that. And then I might have sent you, I either commented or sent a DM or something like that. I'm not even sure. Do you remember?
Honestly, Russ, not the details, not the it's when what this was in December of 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Somewhere
Okay.
around there. November, December 2022. And just real quick, because you mentioned something quite profound, I think, especially quite valuable for the audience. You mentioned what you consume is what you create. I'm gonna come back to the story, of course, but I think this could be quite valuable. Are you a believer in you are the sum of the five people you surround yourself with?
That's funny you asked that because that's actually a different principle for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so and so the short answer to your question is, I don't know if it's five, but whatever that number is, do I
Yeah.
believe? So the way I would say it is, you become who you spend time with.
Mm.
And so if I hang around physically fit people, the chances of me becoming physically fit or stronger are probably going to be decent. If I hang out with successful people who are addicted to growth, from a professional standpoint, who are driven, the chances are I'm going to probably be driven. If
Mm-hmm.
I hang out with people who are lazy, the flip side of that's true, right? If I hang out with people who are lazy, if I hang out with people who are consumed and obsessed with excuses or blame or entitlement or anger or frustration or whatever it might be, I'm probably going to be angry or entitled.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer to your question is, yeah, the way that I would say that is, it's kind of a combination of a couple of principles. So if one principle of success or growth is, what you consume affects what you create, and that's absolutely true. And in my opinion, when I say create, whatever you're creating in your career, whatever you're creating in your life, in your relationships, and whatever else, what you're consuming is affecting your ability to create whatever you want to create. And then
Mm-hmm.
tied to that principle is success is not a single player game, right? I've never met the
Mm-hmm.
individual who said, I got from there, wherever there was, at some point in their life, to here. I achieved this level of whatever it is I've achieved, um, on my own. Like, no one helped me. I didn't learn it. I didn't learn anything from
Yeah.
anybody, and I just kind of figured it all out, and I did it on my own. I've never met that person, and so
Yeah.
success is not a single player game. And so, okay, um, who I'm hanging out with, who I'm choosing to be around. And by the way, it's not just like a friend group, right? It's my colleagues at work, my boss, the company I work for, the places I go. That crowd is, you ought to take a look at them because whatever they look like is what you're going to look like. Just period.
Mm. Osmosis, right? Osmosis. I'm so fascinated by this because the reason I was going into you consume what you create is because, for example, I believe that if you just for example, there was a time in my life where I was very isolated, and I consumed a lot of podcasts. Are you familiar with Alex Hormozy? For
Of
example,
course. Yeah.
Gary Vee,
Sure. Yeah.
right? Those were people I constantly listened to. I didn't see hardly anyone else because I was like locked in. And as a result, I I don't know, I adapted so many of their beliefs, their way of operating. And it's crazy to me because nowadays you can literally surround yourself with Alex Hormozy, with someone like you, like Russ Hill or whatever, by listening to their podcast and surrounding yourself with them, but not physically being with them. That's why I went there, and I think that's so, so fascinating. What are your thoughts on that?
Have those people? I'm sure there are some other people too that you would add to that list, right, Dominique? And have those people, whether it's Gary V, whether it's Alex, you could add a couple other people. Have they had an impact on you?
Have they have an impact on me? Oh yeah, I have $100 million leads right there. Alex
Right, right. You
Hormozy
have
is,
Alex's book, right?
yeah, he changed my life. He everything. I don't know how much you consume of his, but I don't know. I resonate with him so much. Fitness, right? But his deep level of thinking, he's not surface level. He's not just business. He like he's so big on behavior. His psychology, that side of things. I don't know. There's so much, and then giving everything. Here's everything. I don't want it. I have nothing to sell you. Unlike most other people, you know it's genuine. There's no hidden agenda, and just there's so much about that yeah. You can hear I talk
Yeah.
about him, and then there's Gary Vee probably as well, more in the beginning. Gary Vee is more, I feel like right now he's more geared towards top of funnel in terms of very much, okay, gratitude and all these things. And I'm like, I'm past that, right? I want to know more of the tactical things when it comes to business, etc. So
Right.
right now it's Samosi probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point you're making is a profound one,
Hmm.
and I totally am aligned with it, Dominique. And that is, I mean, when you think about the day and age, the time period in which we live, it's absolutely insane what we have access to. And and
Mind
and
blowing.
and a huge, I mean, the fact that you could be working out and have Alex Hormozy talking to you in your AirPods, or you could be in an Uber or walking down a street or going through security at an airport, and you could be you're being coached by him. He's in your head, is insane, and you paid nothing for it. I mean, that's absolute. The fact that I can go online and I can search YouTube right now and receive life lessons from everyone from Jeff Bezos to Warren Buffett to whomever. I can look up speeches in the past by I mean, I can have access to all of that. That's something that, I mean, it wasn't that many years ago that the people who were in our positions in life lived in the cities that we lived in, worked where we worked, walked the roads we walked. They couldn't even have dreamt of that. And so, but the same is true is that I'll give you an example of this principle because this principle is huge for me, and it's all tied
Mm,
to what you consume determines what you create. So you can sit there and choose to listen to whether it's Alex Hormozy or for me Russell Brunson or Naval Ravikant or Ryan
mm,
Holiday or in my life one of the figures that I listen to a lot is Russell M. Nelson. He's a religious figure. So these different people
okay.
you can listen to them and gain value out of it that's going to then impact your mood, going to affect your energy level, is going to affect your decisions, going to affect your strategy in life. You can also choose to listen to people, and there are a good number of people who do. You can listen to podcasts, you can listen to shows, you can read content, you can watch videos that do nothing but piss you off, that make you angry, that cause you to feel
News.
victimized. compromise that cause you to feel like the world is out to get you, that those people over there are evil and that we got to stop them and we got to what I mean, I'll give you for instance, one of the things that I consumed a lot of a few years ago, in fact, go back to the beginning of the pandemic, was political podcasts, political talk
Mm.
shows. I was interested in politics. And then I wondered, man, why am I always so angry? why am I feeling drained? Why do I look at that person and maybe not have the most positive opinions of that stranger? And so you've got a good percentage of the world right now that's listening to content that has
Hmm.
voices in their AirPods that are making them angry, that are
Yeah.
causing them to isolate themselves from other people in the world. And that's their right. That's their ability to do that. I made this decision maybe 3 or 4 months into the pandemic that okay, I'm done with that. Like whether I
What made
agree
you make that decision?
because
What
I was
what was the epiphany?
angry.
And it
And
got to a point where it overflowed, right?
well, it was just affecting like
Okay.
my mindset. It was affecting my ability to create. What good is that? I mean, where does that get me? So I'm angry at someone over masks. I'm angry over somebody over restrictions. I'm angry. I mean, like, in the pandemic, I'm angry at people because they believe that. I'm frustrated because that. Those people are out to get us, right? And so there are a lot of voices. I'm not putting any judgment on whether anyone's right or wrong. I actually don't even
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
What the point here is my ability to create or my mood or my mindset physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually is affected by what I'm listening to. So it's just I guess the takeaway for me and that I would advocate to other people, I do this all the time, is just consider the voices, what you're consuming, who you're surrounding yourself with, whether it's on a podcast or whether it's the crowd you hang out with or the people you work alongside, and just consider how are they influencing me? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And is that getting me closer to where I ultimately want to be professionally, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever it might be? And just analyze that.
I want to digress that and dissect that rather. Really, really interesting to me because why do you think, Russ, we have all this information, right? All of it. The best information out there we can with the snap of our finger. Now, why do you think that people still choose to opt for the news, comfort, Netflix, when they could literally put Alex Amosi, I don't know, Russell Brunson you mentioned, right? Inspiration to me too. Put yourself, Russell, into their ear, have you, them, coach them, and they still choose not to. Why do you think that is?
Um, it's a good question. I don't know that I have the right answer. What do you think? What's your opinion on it?
Honestly, probably comfort. We don't like change. I don't know, maybe we don't see the reward. It's too hard. It's like, what's this gonna I don't know. It's like, okay, if I listen to this podcast, will my life change? No. But if I listen to 100, yes, right? And or if you actually take action on this is what I got from Emoji, right? Learning means a change in behavior, which has completely changed my life, just that perspective. But I don't know, back to your question. Honestly, I don't have the answer because I was never wired like that.
Right.
But comfort,
Yeah, maybe a lack
what do
of
you
awareness.
think?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Awareness? Okay.
That's where I went was where you went, and I'll say more about that in just a second. I think part of it's well, that's what's on. Those are the dominant voices in the media. You can't turn on a TV channel, cable network, a satellite channel, and get Alex Hormozy, right?
Yeah.
There, he's still as into the mainstream as he is, or a Gary Vee, or a Ryan Holiday, or a Russell Brunson, or a Naval Ravikant. I mean, the list, whoever it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that's not filling mainstream media in any country. Those are still fairly niche and nuanced. They're not in the mainstream, so to speak. I mean, they are, but not really. You know what I mean? So I'd say that's one of them.
Yeah.
So access to it and what's on what.
Exposure to it.
Yeah, right. So I think that's part of it. The other part of it is I do think that there is the human default position is that I really enjoy. I mean, the brain doesn't want to think, right? It doesn't want to do anything differently.
Mm,
It wants to be. It's all about habits and habitual. And so,
yeah.
I mean, you're in your line of work, what you do, Dominic, it takes some effort for me to get off of the couch and go to the gym, or some effort to go. And for somebody like you or somebody like me, that doesn't take a lot of effort because we're so stimulated by it. It's so rewarding. It's just part of our lifestyle. For others, it's like
Yeah.
that's a huge battle, right? That's not a habit for them. So that takes a ton of effort. And so we're creatures of habit and we're creatures of laziness. It's just the human condition. My body, if I were just to let it do what it wants to do, would like to just sit in this chair and like not move at all and have you bring food to me that tastes good
Yeah.
and probably isn't
Mm-hmm.
good for me, right? And just watch something and consume something. Back to your question about why do I consume what I consume? It's much easier for me to listen to voices that reinforce what I already believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get into my AirPods or you get on my cable channel or my content and you say, Russ, your view on this is right. And you are right on that. And those people are evil or that perspective is wrong. Yeah, man. I want voices in my head that I mean I don't, but the human condition is um, we want voices in our head that remind us, that reinforce. It goes to your comfort point that tell us we're right. And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and my experience is the growth curve. If you were to look at, actually on a graph, and you were to look at that sheet of paper or that screen, that app, and it was showing your growth, meaning your mental, your how much you're growing in your wisdom. If I'm listening to
Mm-hmm.
voices that reinforce what I think, my growth curve flattens.
Mm-hmm.
It plateaus. And
Yeah.
when I listen to voices that offer different ideas, like some of the things you suggested that you've heard from different voices, it goes, "Oh, I haven't thought of it that way before." Now that growth curve is steepening. And then if you actually
Yeah.
go from thinking about it and hearing about it and actually execute on it, and you realize, oh, that's harder than it sounds. Man, that growth curve is just getting steeper and steeper. And I just think driven people and people who've achieved some level of success in any manner of life, you become addicted. You become addicted to steep growth curves.
Yeah.
And if you are going to be addicted to a steep growth curve, that requires listening, consuming, watching, reading people who think differently than you do.
Mm-hmm. That's a really, really great point. Now, I want to touch on something and want your take on this too. Cost. We always, whenever it's like, okay, we're ordering food. Should I go with the new thing, the sushi? I've never tried it, or with the burger and fries that I already know what it tastes like. We always evaluating the cost when we buy a book, when we consume content. It's whatever it is, what's the cost, which is often time, money, right? One of the two ways. And what I'm thinking is, for example, with content, now this is, I know it's familiar. We like familiar. Like if I bet you, if you only grew up with country music, you would eventually like country music because it's familiar, right? So
Mhm.
it's the same thing there, in my opinion. And I want your take on it. Is it because, okay, it's comfort, it's the cost is like, I know it's gonna happen, so I'm gonna opt for that. I want that dopamine, I can predict it.
I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, like, so if we talk about fitness, it's an area of expertise for you, an area where you've got wisdom and experience and you monetize sharing that, right? And that's a passion of yours. I think, the first time I walked into a gym was, man, I might have been 30, maybe 33.
Hey,
Like, yeah, like
mm,
like that wasn't something I was raised with. I wasn't raised in a home that was like,
Okay.
let's go to the gym or let's work out or the weights are in the garage. Like
Yeah.
that was not my upbringing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally I tell people this story whenever fitness comes up and they just die laughing. They think I'm just an idiot about it, but it's true. And that is, I didn't realize, like, this is so crazy, but I didn't realize, I literally thought that the body you got was the body that you just had. And so
What?
when I would see somebody um, super muscular or built, toned, whatever you want to say, I would think, wow, man, they won the lottery on the body thing, and I got screwed because I've got a smaller frame and there was no depth
Holy shit.
to it. And so then somebody made some comments to me and they're like, "Hey Russ, why don't you know something about getting bigger?" And I literally thought, "Oh, is there a way to do that? Isn't that crazy?
That
That's
is crazy. And
crazy."
I want to, Russ, ignorance cost. I hate it. It's costing me
Right.
$1 million minus whatever I'm making right now, not knowing how to make $1 million, and it's killing me.
Right.
So
Right.
that ignorance cost right there, right? It's
Right.
worst thing.
Right. And so then I go, "Oh, well, I could okay. Now, wow, I could get bigger. Like I could affect myself physically. Well, that's going to require going to a gym. Well, I don't know what to do in a gym. Like there's all those
Mm,
machines and there's those weights, and I can't lift nearly what Dominic would lift. So if I'm on the bench next to you, I'm like way self-conscious because you're
mm-hmm.
lifting a whatever pound dumbbell and I'm like at the 5 pound. And so now I look stupid and ignorant.
Yeah.
So to your point about ignorance, okay, well, therefore that's going to keep me from accessing that. Now, if that were me, now go back to where we were talking 5, 10 minutes ago of the day and age
Yeah.
that we live in. So if that were me, somebody was as stupid as I was in this area 20 years ago, well, what would they do about it? Well, they might
Mm,
just go to a gym, they might go to a bookstore and potentially buy some book about fitness and whatever. And that's if they could drive there and they could buy it, whatever. Well, what do you do now? Well, you freaking open your phone and go on Instagram and you see Dominic
yeah.
Speer doing a workout routine. You're like, oh, I might try that. That's interesting. Or I might listen to a podcast or I might view a YouTube video and search for something like, oh, that's how you use that machine. That's what I did. Like, that's what I
Yeah.
did. So it was
And that's
oh,
how you
there's
started.
100%. So chest routine. Oh, you're like supposed to divide this up into multiple days. Like there's like a push and pull or a chest and shoulders or whatever it is, or arms and back. Oh, like and then like I could YouTube that. So I would search on YouTube like, oh, when yeah, my gym's got that machine. I don't have no freaking idea how to use it, but I'll look it up on
Yeah.
YouTube. Oh, that's how you do a chest fly. Okay. Well now, and then I'd write it down. Like I'd screenshot, walk into the gym
Yeah.
and go, "Okay, here it is. Let me pull it up on my phone where no one can see me. Oh, that's what you do. You do it this way." And so the access that we have to information. So my point in all of that is if you're interested in growing, if you're
Mm-hmm.
interested, and I'm not talking physically, that's part of it, but in
Yeah.
any area, you just have to, I mean, it's a point we've been making where you've got ignorance, there's tons of wisdom available to you. And I'll give you one other quick point on this, and then anywhere you want to go, I'm happy to go. But like Naval Ravikant is a voice that is a name I've mentioned multiple times. Naval, Naval. A lot of people haven't heard about him. He's
What
brilliant.
exactly does he do?
He's a former angel. Well, he probably still is an angel investor in the Silicon Valley area, tech companies in the
Okay.
U.S. And so he made more money than he ever needed from that. And so he's been on Joe Rogan's show. He's been out there in different areas.
Insane.
He's and he became quote unquote famous by a tweet storm maybe 5, 10 years ago. In the middle of the night, he just got on Twitter, X now, right? And he just spewed like 15 tweets about how to get rich, and
Mm.
it went viral and it caught on, and and one of the things. So this is one thing that I would have never known. I would have been ignorant about until I came across his content talking about one of the things that he preaches is that a salary, like a salary, from a job, a salary that you get paid
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most unhealthy addictions in life.
Mm-hmm. Why?
And I'll let him explain that, but I'll give you the quick version. So if you're interested in that, you ought to Google him and search him out
Okay,
and
okay.
look up the Joe Rogan episode or clips of it on YouTube. They're all over, and you'll be blown away. And so what he says is because no one ever got rich with a salary, and
Mm.
then he talks about performance based pay. And so at the time that
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to this, Dominic, years ago, I have a salary. I'm an employee of an organization. And so he's saying a salary is an unhealthy addiction. I'm thinking, dude, it's a healthy addiction for me. I need steady income. Like that's what you seek. You go out, you get a job, and you get someone who's willing to pay you a certain amount, whether it's $20,000 a year, $10 an hour, $100,000 a year, whatever it is, depending on where you are in the world. They pay you that salary, and you think, man, I've made it. That's awesome. They've committed to paying me this much per year or per month or per week. He would say to you, that's absolutely terrible because the behavior that it drives and the mindset that it drives is entitlement and laziness. So
Mm-hmm.
now you're paying me to do it. Let's say I work at a restaurant. You pay me to show up. Like all I have to do, or I work at a gym, or I work in an office, and you're giving me a salary. Well, what do I have to do in order to get that salary? Show up.
I want to touch on something here because the biggest shift, and I want to hear your take on this. When you become an entrepreneur, guess what? You only get rewarded for the actual output. There's no showing up. I put in 8 hours. Let's go.
Right,
Okay. You
right.
put 12 hours. I don't care. And the behavior you get told as an employee, you get rewarded for showing up. To your point, the biggest shift as an entrepreneur, can you attest to this? Is no one cares. Get it done.
Just showing up does jack squat. And so when I became a business owner or an entrepreneur, as you're talking about, I was at the time working for a consulting firm. So I was an employee. And it was the first time that I ever had a dashboard, a sales number. I was working in the area. The clients that we would consult, we had to sell to. There's no sales team out there.
Mm,
So I would fly to wherever, New York City, New Jersey, Chicago, London, Singapore, wherever it was, and meet with this organization that had contacted our company, interest in using our firm. Well, whether or not that turned into a deal and how big that deal was and how many years that deal was dependent on my ability to sell them, bring value and sell it. Right. And so now my
mm,
income for the first time in my life, I've got a salary, like a lot of sales positions, I've got a base salary, and then I've got incentives built upon that. And
yeah.
and the company that I worked for, the salary was extremely low. It was it
Mm,
was I I couldn't have maintained my current lifestyle at the time I joined that firm with that salary. We wouldn't have been able to pay our bills. Um, and so, but that was the base salary. But then the commission and the incentives and the upside, what I would call performance based pay, had no ceiling. Could make it.
mm,
And so I had colleagues that were buying lake houses and cabins and boats and this and all, like they were making bank. And
mm,
so I began to think, okay, well, what do they? We talked at the beginning of this episode that you become who you spend time with. And so I found a
mm-hmm,
way as a junior member of that firm to spend a lot of time with the people who were the most successful in our firm. And that's a whole nother episode, a long story about the value that I was willing to bring. And I didn't even need to be paid much because I had a long-term view. If I can spend time around them, it's going to unlock wisdom that's going to then teach me, not in a month, not in 2 months, but probably in 6 or 12 months. And then maybe next year I can be on my path to what they're doing. So I did that, and that started to happen. So then I started to unlock the wisdom and be able to close accounts similar to what they did. That's patience and time, and I did it. So then our firm, Dominic, our firm came to us several years later. It was bought out by a private equity firm, and they wanted to hire a bunch of new people in the positions we were in. Long story short, they made a decision to double our base salary, which in the minds of most people, you go, holy crap, they're like giving you, they're doubling your income.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, but the other thing that they did was they cut in half the incentive-based pay.
Why did they do that?
And well, it's a long story, but
Okay.
the takeaway is for me was I left. And one of the reasons, that was one of the contributing factors to my departure and a decision to go somewhere else, was because I become so addicted to performance-based pay. In other words, don't double my base salary. Don't pay me to show up. And so for our firm, the company that I mentioned, these two divisions of our company, I'm one of three co-founders of the firm. I'm one of three owners of it, and then we've got a team that is amazing, totally experienced, just amazing people that work alongside us. There's not one person in our organization who has a salary. There's nobody.
Not one. Not one. It's all incentive based.
Yeah.
This is really interesting because,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, it's just like normally you would just think, okay, maybe in a sales position, right? Okay, that makes sense. But every role, that's interesting.
Right. Project management, delivery, creative, everyone from a videographer to a graphic designer to a project manager to an executive assistant to everybody. There's not a single person. They're all based on, if you get this done, then you'll make this. And by the way, if you get that done, there's a kicker that you could make that. And so if you go back to the point that we were making, I would have had no idea. Those thoughts would have never been in my mind if I hadn't have listened to Naval Ravikant. The salary is unhealthy addiction. Holy crap, is that true? I don't know if that's true. Let me think about it. Oh my gosh, I think it is true. Okay, well then what does that mean? How would that affect me? Okay, now a year or two later, we're building a company, and I'm thinking, well, that principle is probably true. So the point is, the more that you seek voices that challenge your way of thinking. When Naval Ravikant said on a YouTube video or a podcast episode or whatever, salary is an unhealthy addiction, it caused me to go, wow, I've never thought about that. And then now look at everything in my life it's affected. And it's just dramatic. So I would just have people again think about success is not a single player game. Who are you tapping into? What you consume determines what you create. And then one other principle that I mentioned, Dominic, that's attached to all of this, but it's just a core principle of success, in my opinion, is you can't be stuck if you're in motion. And so many people get caught up thinking about, dreaming about. So there is this moment, because we've been talking a lot over the last several minutes about what you consume and who you're listening to and these various voices. I don't listen to Gary Vee much anymore either. I think he had a profound effect on my way of thinking years ago. I frankly don't think the content's nearly as good as it used to be, but I'm appreciative of the value he brought to me years ago. And one of the things that he would frequently talk about or say was, when I used to listen to him, was, hey, most of you, 95% of you who are hearing me give this speech or do this podcast or watch this video, you're not going to execute on what I'm saying. And that's this principle I'm talking about. You can't be stuck if you're in motion. And so we've spent a lot of time in this conversation talking about who you're listening to. That's only of so much value unless you are in motion. And so, okay, I'm dreaming of this. I'm planning it. I'm thinking about it. This might be possible. Well, are you executing? Are you in motion? Are you doing things that are moving you forward? And so many people, in my experience, get paralyzed because they have a mindset that's macro. In other words, oh, okay, I want to do this, or I want to be that, or I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to be fit, or I want to whatever. And so I'm thinking about all the things that I have to do and what it would take to get from here to there, and that becomes intimidating and causes me to therefore be paralyzed because they're
So
just
how
so
would you prevent that?
you have a micro mindset. So in other
You
words,
break it down, you dissect it.
100% motion is what matters. Okay, I have a dream of being an entrepreneur, owning my own company. Great. What are you doing this month about it? You might not launch the company.
Mm,
You may not be an entrepreneur for 2 years from now. You may not leave the job you're in for 2 years from now. You may not have the body that you desire or want this summer, or you may not be as healthy as you want to be, whatever it is. You may not have that big house or that boat or be able to afford the trips yet. But in order to get to that, what are the small things that what I would call micro things that I need to do this month, the next week or two or three, and when you're doing the micro things and you're in motion, you're doing something, moving you toward that target, whatever it might be. That's going to motivate you. You're going to get energy from it. It's
the
going
small
to
wins, right?
right. Where what's the least motivating thing that any human being can do in any area? Be idle. Just sit there and think about it. Don't be in
Yeah,
motion. Just sit there.
think
Watch some
more.
more videos. Read some more things. Daydream some more, right? And and then it's just I could never do that. I could never accomplish that, or I'm not making any progress, or I'm not any better off. I'm not any more fit. I don't have more money. I'm not getting promoted. Well, yeah, because you're not in motion.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that it's that I want to be an entrepreneur? Okay, what do I do? Is it just so scary for people that they like,
Oh,
okay, let me just rather watch more videos to satisfy, give me the satisfaction of, okay, I'm being productive. And then they just so scared of that and they don't know what to do, right?
yeah, I think there's lots to it. I mean, I think the desire to be an entrepreneur is stronger. It's more widespread than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Um, in my lifetime anyway. And so there is this awareness and this desire to do it, but what do I do and how do I get there? And it's much more it's much easier for me to lean into that salary addiction that I was talking about a few minutes ago, which is, oh, I'll just go find a job. Oh, I'll just go do so, and which is a good first step. I mean, I spent a good chunk of my life as an employee, not an entrepreneur. And
Mm-hmm.
so where I would coach somebody on that is what are you passionate about? What do you wake up thinking about? What do you lean toward just naturally? And then what experience or wisdom do you have? What expertise do you have in it? So your value, Dominic, let's talk about you. So your value from a fitness or a well-being standpoint, your value is that came from you doing what?
Well, being in shape, right? And
Okay, so which
working out,
required you to do what?
work out, right?
Right. But in order to work out and do it in an effective way, what did you have to do?
Show up consistently, eat the right things, right?
Yeah, but how did you know? How did you know what the right thing to eat or the right workout to do or where to focus? How did you know that?
I think that's a great question. Great question. Because I
Well,
think this
answer
can
it.
lead into
Where did it
in a
come
lot of
from?
things. No, no, honestly, just at the beginning, it was just, okay, let me dive right in. Let me do this. I want this. Let's go.
How
I
old
did
were
so
you?
many mistakes, but I figured it out. When I first started, I was 14.
Okay, so a
Yeah.
teenager.
And yeah, and I seek for help from assistance from, for example, my older brother, who looking back didn't know much either, but he knew more than me. All the
Right.
players at the football academy I was at, things like that, soccer for Americans. But yeah, just seeking help from older people and honestly just figuring it out, like watching YouTube videos, but I was moving, right? I was moving to your
Right.
point.
Right. Okay, so good. So at what point? So 14 is when you started that. At what age were you when you realized, how long did it take before you went, wow, I'm into this?
Honestly, not too long. I would say because at 14 I got a little bit of taste, but I was really then more consistent from 15 to 16. And
Okay.
once I started seeing those newbie gains, and I was very, very lean for football anyway, and then my abs started to show a little bit of chest, and I was like, holy shit, let me do more of this, right? And that's why I say the more you achieve, the more you think you can achieve, right? But yeah, that's pretty much to answer your
Okay, and then
question.
when did you know? When did you think or question, I wonder if I can monetize this?
Honestly, because okay, I don't want to digress or go too much into this, but pretty much I was very into football my whole life. I wanted to become a professional soccer player, right? It was my dream ever since I was a little kid. And then I started getting into fitness and I noticed that I started loving that too. I had a passion for it. And it started to conflict a little bit because I wasn't doing the activities I needed to do for football. Primarily, I was focusing in the gym a little bit too much on the weightlifting side of things, and that's where it sort of started to conflict. Now, when did I start to believe that I could monetize it? Honestly, during COVID, when I saw an influencer and he impacted me with calisthenics, and he was making a living off that, I was like, that's the dream. Holy shit. He planted that seed. And then 2021, I was still in football. I went to the US, came back, injuries. I decided to stop. And then I was like, I know exactly what I'm gonna do because that seed was planted a while back. I went straight into it and I was like, I'm gonna change my life.
Okay. Right. And you don't have to get into the details, but maybe another thought or two about you went to somebody and offered your services. Hey, I
When I
got
started my business.
right.
Yeah, yeah. So it was interesting because I actually, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I started an agency. So I wanted to start a social media agency. That was the thing at the time. And then someone pointed out to me like it wasn't really working. I didn't know what I was doing, right? And someone pointed out to me that like, bro, like, have you seen your body? Have you seen it? I was like, yeah, it's okay. He's like, what? It's amazing, right? Why don't you teach people how to do that? I was like, huh, never thought about that. And that's sort of when because my goal was always, I never knew I could do coaching, right? I had a degree, personal training degree. I just finished, but I wanted to become an influencer of like, million subscribers on YouTube, just create content, etc. And I never knew that, oh, I can make money from this. This is a business. I can actually help and impact people's lives on a more personal level, right? And yeah, and it was again the ignorance that I didn't know.
Right. And so you were talking a minute ago about being an entrepreneur and how do you get into that? How do you do that? You do exactly what you just described, which was, okay, what am I passionate about? What have I developed some expertise in? It could be plumbing. It could
Yeah.
be accounting. It could be driving something, building something, doing. It could be anything. For me, I had this obsession with how to be a more effective leader, and for me, that journey began. And so
Where did that come from?
well, it came from. I'll tell you, it came from a miserable experience. So I was in the media business at the time, and I was working in sports and news, and I thought my whole career would be in the media
Mm.
business. And then I started to in my early 20s, I started to analyze, okay, in order to have the lifestyle I want, I think I need to make around this much money. Okay, well, who in this industry makes that much money? Oh, well, it's people in these jobs or that jobs. And it was two different categories. One um, was people on the air. So whether, it's
Mm-hmm.
ESPN um, or a television network, or, this is back in before, social media and the digital economy that we have today. And
Curious was like into the direction of like a Stephen A. Smith, something like that.
right. So if sports
Okay.
is going to be that, right?
Yeah.
At the time, I mean, because I'm older, it was Bob Costas, entering the Olympics for the U.S. or
Okay.
somebody like that, or it might be somebody on Sky TV in London, or it might be, whatever it might be. It was somebody. You got to be in media language. You have to be an anchor. So you have to be somebody on the
Mm-hmm.
set, sitting on the set. So I thought, okay, sports or news, right? So I thought, okay, I know kind of what they make. I've researched how much money they make. That's a good amount of money. I'd like to have that amount of money. But how many people, how competitive is it to get into that spot? Super competitive. How many people want to be a sports broadcaster? Like a million, right? Just
Yeah.
tons of people.
Oh
So I
yeah.
thought that's going to be insanely competitive. Now, do I think I could make it? I might be able to make it, but there are a ton of things out of my control. And
Mm-hmm.
and I don't like that. So what's if it's not that in this industry, the media industry, what's another place? And I thought, oh, the other people who make a ton of money are their bosses. The people
Mm-hmm.
who hire and fire the people who you see on television, or these days you hear on the internet, or on whatever. So I thought, oh, I could go in. I wonder if that's an easier route to go. And so I thought media executive. My options were anchor in news or sports, or media executive. I chose executive. So okay, well I
Mm-hmm.
got to run the place. So I've got to become an executive. So now I was interested in leadership for lots of different things. Anyway, long story short, I get
Yeah,
promoted.
yeah.
I seek a job, a management job, low level, in a news and sports outlet that I worked at in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I go for it, and I get the job. I get promoted.
Nice.
And I think that I'm all that. I'm like, man, my career is set. I'm making more money than I thought. It's not that much money, but I'm on my path. Well, our
Yeah.
company did an employee engagement survey. You know what that is?
No.
Okay, so it's where the large corporations do it, and they survey. So they say, okay, Dominique, everybody who works here, we're going to have you on this date. You're going to go online, or you're going to go into the office, you're going to fill out this form and ask you 12 questions. And it's designed to measure how much you like working here. How
Oh
engaged are you
yeah.
as an employee? How
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
satisfied, right? An employee
Yeah.
satisfaction survey. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
in large companies, they'll survey 10,000 people, and then they know, oh, our workforce is, and there also allows them to go, well, where do we have problems? Like which teams at which factories, or which, in my case, which TV stations or radio stations or media outlets, where do we have leadership problems? So our company did this survey, and the results came back, and I was rated like 23, 24 years old. I was rated the worst leader in the whole company. And the
Like
people
the
that
worst. The
no,
worst.
there
Like
was no there was
lost.
nobody who had a worse score than I did.
Lost.
Last place,
Crazy.
the worst. And that's a long story. I've written, three books
Yeah.
now in my I think it's in the first book, Decide to Lead. I tell this story of being called in, and this was a total linchpin moment, if you will, for me, a pivot point in my career. And long story short, I was pissed, embarrassed, humiliated, deflated. I blamed everybody but myself. I blamed the people that worked for me. They're a bunch of losers. You know what I mean? I blamed my
Mm-hmm.
boss for not developing me. I blamed the company for not training me to be better leader. I blamed everybody but me. And then
Mm.
for the first like 24, 48 hours. And then I realized, dude, Russ, you suck. You think you're a really good leader, but you suck. And your people don't like you, and you've got no future leading people if you don't change. And so at that point, you asked me what made me obsessed with leadership. It was that experience. And so I went, oh
That's
crap,
fascinating.
how do I become a more effective leader? So what did I do in that day and age? There was no YouTube. There was no internet. So it was go to a bookstore and buy every book you can find on leadership. And then the
Yeah.
company, I worked for a boss who didn't fire me, but mentored me, an amazing human being who I owe so
Mm-hmm.
much. Remember, success is not a single player game principle we
It's
opened this
not.
episode talking about. And so I worked for a mentor. And so she said, hey, Russ, why don't we send you off to this leadership development course and they'll give you some ideas. And I went to several. So I just became a student of it. There's a lot to this story. We don't have time for it, but I became obsessed with leadership and I just bought everything. And then as the internet came about, I consumed everything. I went to different places. I studied it. And then, and so I became passionate and I turned the scores around.
Yeah.
My people ended up loving me. I got promoted in that company. They gave me bigger teams. And I ended up making a lot more money. And I got to the executive level in that media company. So I went from the worst leader to being promoted, and it was awesome. That was over a decade, right?
What a
And
story.
and then I realized this principle, Dominique, which is what we're talking about in the world of entrepreneur, that if you can monetize what you're passionate about. So guess what I had done that you might not have done or other people? I'd read every freaking book on leadership. Guess what I had done?
Mm.
I had spent gobs of time thinking about it, listening to, studying, writing in a
Became your
journal on
obsession.
it. Yeah. And so then I went, and then someone came to me and said, you ought to. I had like 3 or 4 friends, people who I knew who said, dude, you ought to charge people to give them advice on leadership. I'm like, oh, you're whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. Like someone going to you saying, hey, Dominic, you're in shape. If you looked in the mirror, people would pay you for that. And you're like, oh, whatever. I'm just some dude at the
Yeah,
gym.
yeah. That
And
was
then you
my
go,
exact
wait,
reaction.
right, right. And so for me, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, okay, well, I'm not the world's expert on leadership. No one would pay me. Are you nuts? And then,
Yeah.
and then I started to go, oh, actually, maybe they would. And
Mm.
um, and so then I looked for, well, then who would hire? Like, does anybody teach leadership? Oh, there are these companies. Oh, I want, and then I found myself in San Diego, California, auditioning for a firm. They hired me. They made me an offer the same day. Then suddenly I was in New York and Philadelphia and Chicago meeting with executives of the
Crazy.
biggest companies, and they were paying
Yeah.
$25,000 for the day,
For a
for a
day.
day of my time. And I wasn't getting that
That's an
because I was an
insane shift.
employee. But my company, the firm I worked for, was charging XYZ company. I'm not joking. This is 10 years ago. They were charging that company $25,000 for one day of my time. And I
Holy
thought,
shit.
wow, that's crazy. Like somebody would pay and I felt intimidated. Like, well, what the crap can I share? And they gave me some content and whatever. And so then now I'm signing these 7-figure deals with companies that are desperate for help to develop their executives. And now I'm monetizing my passion. And so when you
Yeah.
talk about, I'm taking us full circle back to your question about entrepreneurship. So somebody's listening to this and going, well, I don't know what I would do. What are you passionate about? For Dominic, it was working out, being physically fit, growing your body, whatever it might be. For me, it was leadership development. So for you, what is it? And whatever it is, you're probably reading stuff. You're probably watching videos. You're probably listening to podcasts. You're probably consuming content. You're becoming an expert in this space. You
Yeah.
don't view yourself as an expert, just like I didn't on leadership. You didn't on fitness, but we actually were not the expert, but an expert. We had some wisdom and
Mm-hmm.
experience. And if you go to the market, and you say, hey, I know a little bit about this. The market
Mm-hmm.
is dying for expertise. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the market will pay for it. And so you find out, where is that market? What does it look like to sell what I know and what I'm passionate about and the experience and wisdom I've gained? And you figure out what that deal looks like, and you go find customers, and you have confidence, and you go to the market and you get one client, and then you get another client, and you get another one, and now suddenly you've got a business. That's how you do it.
I think that's it's very profound what you said, because the passion, and then I wanted to go into selling, because selling essentially, if you believe in in what you're doing, you don't need to sell much, right? So
Right.
if you are passionate about something, you can convince people just by your conviction that I know what I'm doing. I can help you, right? And one more thing I wanted to tell, because there's so much we could digress. I don't know how much time you have, right? But really just, you mentioned something very, very cool. And leadership actually wasn't something you were passionate about, was that? Before you really had that experience of like, shit, I was lost in the company,
Yeah, being
and
rated the worst.
you use that fuel to what? Create something beautiful, right? And I often talk about just whatever fuel you have, like it doesn't always have to be pretty. I wanna whatever, whatever, whatever. Use the dark side sometimes to be like, yeah, I'm gonna change my
Oh,
life.
oh, Dominic, I totally believe you on that. And so there are one of two ways to react to those setbacks in life,
Mm-hmm.
what they might be. Your parents getting divorced at a young age, your mother dying, your father abandoning you, you being fired from this job, being rated the worst leader, whatever it is, not making it into that or whatever. In my experience, there are one of two ways to view that. In the moment, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way to view it.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment, it just sucks.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
so, and we all have them. We all go through, you can't go through this journey of life and not have those moments. They're dark, they're lonely, they're painful, they're hurtful. They happen to all of us. And so once you're coming out of it, whether it lasts for a day or a month or a year or a couple of years, whatever it is, the way to view that, in my opinion, is um, to be bitter. I'm pissed that happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm frustrated that happened to me, which is a normal human reaction in the moment of the difficulty. The other way, so the bitterness is normal, but how long you hold on to that determines your ability to positively impact others or give back to the market or grow on your own. So once you can let go of that bitterness or frustration or hurt, maybe not 100%, but 90%, and then you realize,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I actually now have a gift because now I know when I stand on a, Dominic, I get paid now to stand on a stage in front of leaders, companies pay, or virtually or in person. And I look out in that audience and I see leaders who are managers who are struggling. Like they're trying to lead a team at a hospital or a restaurant or a healthcare company or whatever the industry is. They're trying to lead their team of 10 or their team of 1,000, wherever they are on the org chart or in their career. And you don't think I understand what pain they're feeling when they can't deliver the result or their team doesn't like them? You can't speak to them the way I can speak to them because
Yeah.
you've never felt that. And so
Yeah.
guess what I have? A gift.
You do.
And so when your dad abandoned you or your mother died or you were fired from that job or you lost that whatever, you now have a gift of empathy and relating to people that the rest of us don't have. There's no
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
for me to tap into that. And so now the question is, are you going to use that to help others? And in some instances, you can. This sounds bad because I don't mean it that way. Sometimes you can monetize that. The market wants that. Other places, it's not so much about monetizing our career. It's just, man, um, I can be a voice out there to help people in that situation. So for you, whether it was a setback in football or whatever, I don't even know. Now, but you've got, and I don't even know the full list, Dominique, right? But you've got setbacks that have happened in your journey of life so far. They're actually gifts that then give you a gift of empathy to be able to help somebody in their journey to whatever you're helping them on. The same for me.
Yeah.
So it's just a different perspective, right? Am I going to be bitter and it's not really helping me or anyone else? Or am I going to look for a way to use that as a gift to help other people?
That is beautiful. That is beautiful for us, because always like I think I look at celebrities, right? And for example, or rich people, right? Very, very rich people. How do they deal with their kids? For example, I don't envy their kids. I don't. Not
Right.
one bit. Because they know themselves that they are who they are because of the trials and tribulations they went through. And they wouldn't have it any other way because they are grateful for those. And it's not what happens to you, it's how you react. And even if it's not your fault, it's still your problem.
Right. Yeah. No, in fact, most of the time it's it's not your fault. It happens to us. And
Yeah,
I mean, when how many of us can tell stories coming out of the pandemic, the way it affected our business or our careers? I I I
yeah,
um I have a neighbor, somebody who I went to lunch with a few years ago. It was during the pandemic. His business was absolutely collapsing. The industry he was in was so negatively affected by the pandemic. He pivoted, so something negative happened to him. He's an entrepreneur, he's a business owner, successful business, great lifestyle, suddenly all
yeah.
gone. And he pivoted, and
All
within,
gone
I'm
crazy.
not, and without, absolutely within 24 months, the pivot he made in his organization, the way he adjusted his industry, he sold his company, banked the amount of money most of us could never even dream of how much money. I remember talking to him. He texted me the day he sold his company, equity company came in and bought it from him. He texted me and we were chatting and I said, what did it feel like when that deposit was made to your bank account? Like the money went through. I mean, we're talking life changing, like
Yeah.
never has to work again. No, I mean, just extreme
Generational. Yeah.
wealth. Yeah. And great guy. And he was laughing. He's like, Russ, I actually had to log out of the banking app numerous times, log back in. Like, wait, is that money really there? Log back out, log
Of
back in.
course.
Oh my gosh, holy crap. And yet he could have had the mindset of, look what was taken away from me, look what happened to me. In our industry, I mean, the year before the pandemic, I was on 165 flights, from Singapore to Sydney to London to crisscross in the United States. Insanely busy traveling. Pandemic comes,
Yeah.
everything's canceled. Now I look at it
Yeah.
and I go, man, now I travel maybe a tenth of what I used to, and we as a business we're way more successful, but we're traveling almost 90% less. Why? Because of virtual meetings. And
Mm.
so what in the moment looked like, holy crap, this is a setback, actually advanced and helped us in a way we never even would have seen. It meant way more time at home, way more time being able to hit the gym, way more time to be able to, so it's all a matter of perspective. The setback you're experiencing today or right now could be a gift. Ultimately, it's not going to feel like it in the moment, and it actually it could propel you forward. They often do. So anyway,
What's the final thing you want to leave my listeners with? Any life-changing, other than, of course, everything you've already mentioned, but like in a few sentences, something that like maybe you would have told your younger self, or you would tell someone who maybe is in a position where they don't see a way out, whether that's financially, whatever it is, and what would you tell them to change their life?
yeah. Hopefully in our conversation, there's been something of value, right, for somebody out there who's listening and in whatever situation they find themselves in. I think I don't have any. One sentence that I've been holding back. Like, wait till I deliver
The
this and it will
secret
change
sauce.
everybody's life. I just, for me, a lot of when you think about happiness and because on our path to whatever we're trying to achieve professionally, personally, physically, emotionally, whatever it is, it's typically one of the things we're seeking is a lifestyle that will bring us joy, satisfaction. And one of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of time thinking about is in the moments when I am not happy or I don't feel fulfilled, it's typically because of an unmet expectation. And
Mm-hmm.
it's an expectation I have on somebody else. Oh, I thought she was going to do this, or
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were going to do that, or I thought this was going to go that way, and it didn't. So either this person, somebody close to me, could be a customer, it could be a team member, it could be anything. I thought something was going to happen and it didn't happen that way. If you think about it, the frustrations that most of us experience on a day-to-day basis are from unmet expectations. And so the question becomes, can you change the expectation? Are you willing to adjust it? And so if it's in a personal relationship, oh, well, maybe it's okay if she doesn't do it exactly that way. Or maybe it's okay if the market's not reacting to our offer that way. And and can I adjust the expectation? In my experience, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, Dominique, right now, probably in the last year, about unmet expectations and which ones am I willing to adjust. And my experience is when I adjust them about her or him or them or the business or whatever else, and I now adjust the expectation, I find myself in a much, much better place. And so if somebody listening, somebody at the end of our conversation is thinking, man, I have this, I'm just not where I want to be, or I'm experiencing frustration or maybe even depression from something, my thought would be, well, just change the expectation. And I'll give you one tiny example from business. We launched when we launched our leadership training company, um, three, no, yeah, 2 years ago. One at the time I had one business partner. Now I've got two, but at the time I had one. I was a year into being an entrepreneur, business owner. Went off on my own after a career of working for other people. It was extremely risky. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and and anyway, so we're in this, and we have this idea that hey, there's another part of our business that we could launch. So we had some ideas about it, and we decided to do a webinar, like just a meeting, and invite all the executives we knew. So we went on LinkedIn, we made a lot of noise, we emailed our list, so to speak, our clients, all these people, and we had over 1,000 executives register for this webinar. And we prepared, our sales pitch and our deck and all this sort of stuff. And these are clients of ours, people, some of them we've worked with for
Yeah.
over a decade. They've got a lot of trust and
Yeah.
confidence in us. So we went into this was December a couple of years ago. So we go in, all these people show up, like maximum executives from all kinds of different companies, and we present this leadership development tool that we've developed and that we were hitting the market with. And we hit the market during that meeting with the pitch, and and nobody bought. So over 1,000 people
Nobody.
registered. Over 1,000 people registered. Not one person. Not
Not
even
one.
like not
Not
one.
one.
No, nobody.
Holy shit.
And so what was our expectation? Our expectation was, well, somebody's going to buy this, right? Like somebody's going to want this. These are people that trust us. They buy from us. They're clients of ours or have been over the years. They're going to want this thing. And yet they all went, no, we don't want it. We're not interested. They didn't say that, but their actions said it. And so our expectation, oh, this is going to be a new area of our company. It's going to grow dramatically. The market wants this. Unmet expectation. So did it suck in the moment? It sucked in the moment, right? So you get off of that
Oh
and you
yeah.
wait a few days, and you're like, oh my gosh. And so the short version of that story was then January, the end of the year, we're realizing this. And so we went into January. I went to lunch with a few different people, reached out to my network and people who had experience in areas. And I just said, what do you think we're doing wrong in this? and they offered some great ideas to me, some great ideas. And so our expectation adjusted. Oh, this is probably going to take a while to grow. And so the expectation went from, oh, we're going to hit the expectation was we're going to go to the market. They're going to love this thing. They're going to buy it, and we're going to grow the revenue dramatically overnight. Unmet, disappointed. Expectation adjusted. Oh, this is probably going to take us 6 to 12 to 18 months to grow. And we've got to change the way we're doing it. Expectation adjusted, satisfaction, fulfillment comes back in. So the principle, I guess I'd wrap up with is whatever frustration, disappointment you're experiencing in any area of your career or life is coming from an unmet expectation. So adjust the expectation.
There's so much I want to go into that because I think this is so cool, but I think that was so powerful, and I'm going to leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Dominic.